Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me this evening. This evening, I thought I would try something different. I'm going to try something that I would sometimes do in therapy with couples, for instance. That being said, I would like to point out at the very beginning that this is not a substitute for therapy. Okay, this is just a little exercise that I hope will help heighten your awareness. Look at how we interact with people, how we sometimes interact with ourselves, that inner dialogue that we have. Because sometimes we could be in interaction with someone, we'd be having a disagreement with someone, we could be debating something or whatever. And sometimes you see these behaviors arise. And I think our default might be that this is a horrible, toxic person. It could well be. Sometimes you might meet someone who has maybe just had a bad day. Nothing's going their way. Things are going wrong for them. Sometimes you could meet someone who, oh, they could be very anxious. So how they're coming across seems as if they're being very distant. Oh, volume is a little choppy. Let's see if I. One moment. What does the volume sound like now? Does it sound any different? Is it any clearer? Let me know in the comment section because let me see. Okay, it is better. It is better. That's good. I'll tell you what it is. I've got this mic. It's supposed to be this super duper amazing mic. It's just I don't know how to use it. And so when I plug it in, there's like a little thing comes up where it's supposed to make me sound, I don't know, windswept and interesting or something. But I never know how to get the settings right on it. I usually have to turn it off and just plug it in and use it as it is. And that's what I'm doing at the moment. So forgive me, I do still live in the analog age. Anyway, yeah, back to my deep seething envy of these YouTubers that know everything and they can get everything right and they know exactly what they're doing. There's just me and Freud, and Freud's less use than I am when it comes to technology. Anyway, where did I get to? Yeah, I'm looking at these different behaviors. Sometimes they're a pattern of behavior, not always a pattern. As I said, someone could be having a bad day. We could be having a bad day. Sometimes there could be maybe an anxiety. There could be a defensiveness. There could be anything going on. So what I'm going to try this evening is a little exercise with people. I'm going to read out a list of behaviors, and then I'm going to ask some questions. I'm just going to ask you to reflect on them, and then I'm going to ask some questions. So this isn't a meditation. We don't need to take our shoes off, light candles, things like that. But just think about the things that I'm saying, the lists that I'm reading out. In order for this to work, it would be really helpful if people could, in the comment section, if they could just write down little things that come up for them. And you don't give too much detail, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. You don't have to overshare anything. Don't talk about anything that you don't feel comfortable with, but just notice what might be going on as I read these things out, okay? So let me see. Are we ready to start? We're only a few minutes into it. And let me see a few questions already. That's good. I would like to say at the beginning, if anybody has any questions, do please put a little question mark because it's easier for me to find. Other than that, I'm just going to comment on a comment, or I might jump in the middle of someone's conversation. So question marks are always useful for me. So I'm just to begin, I'm going to read out a list. What I'd like you to do as I read this list out is I would like you to pay attention to what might come up for you, what you might even be feeling physically, some of the physical reactions we have. Again, you don't have to share too much, but think about different moments, different situations in your life, different interactions with people. Just things like, whose face do you see? Whose voice do you hear? What age do you feel? Little questions like that that come up for you. So I'm going to begin with the first list. And the first thing I'm going to say is the first word I'm going to say that I'd like you to reflect on is criticizing. When I say the word criticizing, again, think about what comes up for you. What sort of things do you remember? What might you be feeling physically when you hear the word criticizing? The second one is blaming. What comes up for you when you hear the word blaming? Again, what moments do you remember? What interactions, what relationships might you remember? The third one is complaining. When you hear the word complaining, again, what does that bring up in you? Next would be nagging. What moments do you remember? What situations do you remember? What kind of people do you remember when you hear nagging? And then there's threatening. What comes up when you hear the word threatening? Then there's punishing. And lastly, there's manipulation. So I'm going to go through that list again. Again, you think of what you might be feeling physically. Think about what you might be remembering, what age you might feel, what situations you remember. Whose face do you see? Whose voice do you hear? What moments come up for you? Criticizing, blaming, complaining, nagging, threatening, punishing, and manipulating. Now, you reflect back on that list. I'd like to ask you some questions. Again, these are just questions for you to reflect upon. The first question is, when have you done those things? When have you criticized, blamed, complained, nagged, threatened, punished, or manipulated? I know they're not things that we like to think about, but remember what I was saying. There are moments we could have there's a bad moment, there's a bad time, it's been a bad day, it's been a bad situation, and something comes out before we even think about it. So when have you behaved like that? What did you get from it? Did it work? Did it make things worse? Did it push someone away? How did you feel afterwards? Only you can answer that. The next question I'm going to ask is, when has someone treated you like that? Whether it was one-off or whether it was all the time. When has someone treated you like that? When has someone criticized you, blamed you, complained about you, nagged you, threatened you, punished you, or manipulated you? And how did that feel? What's it like to be treated like that? The last question I'm going to ask on that list is, when have you been like that to yourself? When have you criticized yourself? Harshly, more judgmentally rather than critically? When have you blamed yourself for sometimes things that were outside of your control? When have you complained? about yourself that it's never this, it's never that? When have you nagged yourself, thinking you can never get it right, or you're not enough? Threatening is a little odd, but when have you said to yourself, if you don't do this, if you don't complete that, if you're not able to do whatever, then these awful, terrible things are going to happen. It's all going to be your fault. When have you punished yourself? You punish yourself because you make an error, you make a mistake. Or maybe you punish yourself because of how other people react to something that's maybe not that big a deal. When have you punished yourself because other people have reacted badly to maybe you succeeding at something? Manipulation is another kind of strange one when it comes to ourselves. But when have you maybe tried to manipulate yourself? If you go through this, if you do this bad thing for this person, something good's going to happen. Maybe they'll stop treating you like crap. Maybe they'll accept you. Maybe they will approve of you or whatever. If you compromise just that little bit more. So just be interested to have a quick look at some of the comments before I go on to the second list. So let me get back. Let me see. Oh, Mary is saying habits that harm overthinking. Yeah, I often say there's a big difference between being reflective and overthinking something, ruminating over something. Absolutely. Lydia saying she's here for the habits that heal. Well, that's going to be the second list. Okay, yeah, people mentioning my mic, so it's good that it's better now. Angela, you're asking a question. I will answer that when I finish going through this exercise with you. Self-sabotaging, Mira, yes, that's another one. Healthy self-love. Are bad habits a form of self-medication? It can be. It really depends what you mean by medication. Sometimes we might for instance, we might think the path of least resistance is the best thing to do. Now, in some cases, it might well be, but in other cases, majority of cases, if that's all we ever do, the path of least resistance rarely takes us where we want it to. Often it leads us to longer hardship and misery, I often say. Healthy self-love, blaming I regret, being defensive. Angela saying people who think they're superior, criticizing. If it's a constant kind of criticism, that can be the case. Absolutely. Very happy Mondays. Please remember to like the live. Yeah, it's great that my audience say things that I keep forgetting to say. Click like and subscribe and all the rest of it. I keep forgetting to say that. So let me get to Upward and Onwards has asked, what's the question you just asked? Missed it. I'll go through the list very quickly. The words that I say, you think about, what do they bring up in you? What do you feel physically? What do you feel emotionally? What sort of things do you remember? And the first one is criticizing. Then there's blaming. There is complaining. There's nagging. There's threatening. There's punishing. And there's manipulating. And the questions were, when do you do those things? What did you get from doing those things, from behaving like that? How did you feel afterwards? When have people treated you like that? When have they behaved like that with you? How did it feel? And when have you been like that with yourself? When do you talk to yourself in those ways? When do you treat yourself harshly? You judge yourself very harshly. They were the questions around that list. So I hope that was a quick recap. I hope that's what you got. So let me see. Okay. Healthy self love. I complain and blame myself for thinking I knew a lot about life when I could never see how much personality disorders play a role in how we treat people and how they treat us if they have cluster B. Yeah, for some people, it can be like a default setting. Some people can be very abrasive. Sometimes maybe you are talking about, maybe a cluster B personality type. Other times, as I say, you might just catch someone at the wrong moment. You've no idea what happened to them 5 minutes earlier. You've got them on a bad day. Other times, someone could be very defensive. There could be maybe an anxiety or something going on. And it's maybe about trying to protect themselves, but how it comes out isn't really appropriate, whatever. So there can be a lot of different things going on, but it's looking at that list of 7 habits, bad habits, if you will. But you think about what those things may have brought up for you, and especially the questions I was asking about when we do those things. We can be caught at the wrong time. You catch me at the wrong moment, and I will do nothing but moan and complain. You get me at the wrong moment, and I will just shake my fist and hate the world. Um, After I get my coffee or something, whatever it is, a little bit of reflection. No, maybe I was the one that's wrong here. People do not have to think the way I think, and so on. There can be a lot of different things going on, but we can all, to some degree, maybe not do all of them, but we will do some of those things from time to time. What we sometimes don't notice is that we do them. Maybe we do. We feel regret afterwards. We might apologize or whatever. Other times, we might not even notice that we talk like that to ourselves. And as I often say, when we are talking like that to ourselves, asking yourself, whose voice do you really hear? Because it's probably not your own. It's probably something that's been ingrained in you, something that's been, introjected in, something we've taken on board. We've been conditioned, brainwashed, whatever term you want to use. It's not our voice when we're giving ourselves a hard time for not being clairvoyant and being able to see the future, for not being able to read minds, for turning left when we should have turned right. It's the thing, hindsight only comes afterwards. Sometimes we can really, really beat ourselves up. So I would like to go through the second list, and I'm going to ask you the same thing. I just want you to maybe give yourself a little shake. If that's what you want to do, take a deep breath, breathe from your diaphragm, whatever it is, and just relax a little, because I'm going to read out a second list. And again, I'd like you to think about what these words bring up. What do you feel emotionally, but even what do you feel physically? It would be interesting to see if anybody noticed anything different physically, even when I read the second list out. And the first one is caring. The second one is supporting. Thirdly is listening. Number 4 is contributing. Number 5 is encouraging. The next one is trusting. And the last one is sharing. So let me go through that again. Caring. What comes up for you when you think about that word caring? When have you experienced caring? Supporting. Again, what comes up for you when you think of supporting? Listening. What does it feel like when you feel listened to? What's it feel like when you really listen to another person? Hear what they're saying, where they're coming from. Whether you agree with them or not, by the way, depends on the conversation, but what's it feel like when you're actually listening and you're being listened to? Contributing. What does that mean to you? Contributing, being a part of something. Encouraging. What's the word encourage mean to you? What does that bring up in you? Trusting. And lastly, sharing. So I'm going to ask the same questions I asked the first time around. You think of that list: caring, supporting, listening, contributing, encouraging, trusting, and sharing. When have you done those things? When have you been like that? How did it feel? What did you get from it? What did you notice? When have people been like that with you? They've cared. They've been supportive. They've listened. They've contributed in some way. They've encouraged you. They trust you. And they share with you. How does that feel when people are like that with you? And lastly, when have you been like that with yourself? You care about yourself. You're interested in yourself. You look after yourself. You're supportive. You can support yourself. Yeah, of course you can. Things like self-care. When do you listen to yourself? You actually listen to what's really going on. Not necessarily listening to that inner critic that's always going to tell you that you're going to screw it up somehow. Or not always listening to those unhealthy introjects that we get from toxic, selfish people that tell us things like self-care is selfish. But listen to those other parts of us. Listen to those parts of us that, there's absolutely nothing wrong with me wanting a better quality of life. There's nothing wrong with me for wanting healthy, decent people in my life. There's nothing wrong with me for saying no once in a while, especially if it goes against, I don't know, my moral compass or my values or whatever. When have you contributed to something? Yeah, you've been encouraging. You've encouraged yourself when things are very difficult. You recognize it might be difficult. You're not going to get there overnight. It might have to be a series of little steps you have to take. You're embarking more on a journey rather than a sprint to a finish line. But you have encouraged yourself. Not now does not mean the same as not ever. Difficult does not mean the same as impossible. You've encouraged yourself. You have tapped into those moments in your life, those situations where you have overcome, you have accomplished, and things like that. And you've used that energy to encourage and motivate yourself. When have you trusted your own instincts, your gut feeling? Not you've created a narrative and decided that's true. That's different. You just trust your gut feeling. You trust your instincts. You trust yourself. You have a faith in your abilities. You're also aware of areas that you might struggle, but you still have a faith and a trust in yourself. And when have you shared? You felt safe or comfortable enough to share something, maybe personal, with someone. Be interesting. I'm just wondering what people think of that second list. So I'm going to scroll back a little bit. Let me see. So I'm trying to find out where I was the last time. So hold on, let me see. It's easier if I do this. Right, pop out chat. There we go. If I get back. Okay. You're saying going silent or shutting down to protect myself. Fear. Fear can be a deterrent. I always like, I know it's a silly sci-fi kind of reference, but I remember, I think it might have been Peter Capaldi, and I'm probably going to completely misquote him, but I think he said in one of the episodes about fear being like a superpower because it can give you the energy to run faster than you've ever had to run, or the strength to fight harder than you've ever had to fight. Depends on what we do with it. Depends, I guess, on what kind of fear we have. Rebs is saying, all of these make my stomach clench, all associated with narcissistic ex-husband. I'm guessing that would have been the first list, Rebs. These are the things that were coming up for you, your ex-husband. Another question they ask at the bottom of each of those lists as well could be, could I do with some more of this in my life? I'm going to hazard a guess the first list is probably going to be a no. So we learn how to protect ourselves. We learn how to recognize and enforce our boundaries, sometimes even just get out of that situation if nothing's going to change, you know. But the second list, could I do with some more of this in my life? Yeah. I always say the antidote to toxic people are decent people. So where do we get to? Let me see. Okay, criticized. Mary again, criticized myself often. Where do we get to? Very happy Mondays. These are awesome prompts for self-reflection work, in my opinion. Thanks so much. I should say, actually, this list, this little exercise, there's actually a colleague gave this to me many, many years ago. And I would sometimes use this if I'm working with couples. But the more I notice, the more I look at it, it's not just the interactions in relationships, personal relationships. We're talking about a relationship with anybody. Could be in work, could be your next door neighbor, could be a sibling. That's what I said at the beginning as well. Sometimes we do experience those things. And we experience those things from someone who has just had a bad day. They're not like that all the time. Sometimes we're the person who's having a bad day. Sometimes it could be someone who's being very defensive. They could be very anxious. They could be whatever. Sometimes we could be like that. But whenever you look at the different dynamics, you think of the questions, you know, if you've done those things, what did you get from them? How did it feel using them? And how does it feel when other people treat you like that? So it's really building on our awareness. And you think of the second list as well. The second list does not make you a walkover. It doesn't make you a doormat, because you can still be assertive. You can still be boundaried. You can, it's like the listening. You can listen to someone. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to agree with what they're saying or what they're thinking, but you're paying attention to what they're saying. When they listen to you, again, they might not necessarily agree with everything you're saying, but there is something powerful in just being heard, feeling as if we're understood. So yeah, they are good for self-reflection. I also think as well, recognizing the times we can be like that with ourselves, even in our own internal dialogue. We'll judge ourselves harshly, we'll criticize ourselves, um, we'll give ourselves a lot of grief over different things that have happened. The second list, especially if you've been maybe in a difficult, toxic relationship environment or whatever, the thought of showing yourself a bit of compassion, paying attention to your gut feeling, a lot of these things would have been eroded maybe over time. So it's good to get back into those habits and recognize those things. I'm just thinking what I'm going to do is I will put this list. I don't know if I can put it on YouTube. If I can, I will, unless it just comes out in the comments or something. I will put these out on both Substack and on, what's the other one? Patreon. I will put them there. They're free to look at. People want to, join up or do whatever, subscribe or do whatever it is, that's entirely up to them. But I'll put the exercise and I'll put the lists out there so that you can read them or download them or do whatever it is you want. You can go through it yourself. So if I haven't done it by the end of tomorrow, someone put it in the comment section that I haven't done it yet, and that'll remind me. Can I forgive myself when I make mistakes? Don't blame myself because I'm a human. Yeah, absolutely. You're as deeply flawed as the rest of us. We all are, every single one of us. And it's recognizing that. I think we can feel regret. It always depends on the situation, but we can feel a lot of deep regret. That is not the same thing as we have done something really bad and awful. And I guess it's situational. It depends on what it is. But being able to maybe forgive ourselves. If I put it to you this way, when we look back at something, it doesn't matter if we were a kid. We might have been 10 years of age. We might have been a teenager or something. Whether it was when we were a kid, whether it was 10 years ago, whether it was, 5 years ago, even if it was 6 months ago, a lot of the time what we do is we look back and we are judging ourselves through the eyes of the person we are today with today's wisdom and today's experience. So if you think about it, you could, let's imagine you did something when you were about 15, something that you feel embarrassed about, something that you regret, something, or maybe something you didn't do that you wish you had have done. You think of the age you are today, you could be looking back at that teenager and you are judging them through the eyes of the adult you are now. How much about the world does a 15-year-old know? Now, I know they think they know everything, but really, realistically, how much do they know? And that's often what we're doing. And even if it was something from maybe a year or so ago, a lot of the time when we go through that first list in our own head, it's because of the information and the experience we have today. That's why I think a little bit of self-reflection, sometimes a little bit of self-compassion, sometimes even a little bit of self-forgiveness can go a long way. So where do we get to? Healthy self-love is saying, I complain and blame myself for thinking I knew a lot about, again, what I've just said. Could never see how much personality disorders play a role, how they treat people. So, well, it's a saying, I sometimes criticize people's football teams when someone tries to wind me up if I've had a bad day. Can be a harsh criticism said back. Makes you feel regret when you reflect. And this is the thing about regret. Again, it's not something we particularly like feeling, but we can learn from it. I'm a big believer that we learn as much from our mistakes as we do from what works. We have to learn what doesn't work as much as we learn what does. Oh, Angela, this is quite deep. We see ourselves through the eyes of the people who didn't love us when we hear the voice of our narcissistic parents in our heads. And this is the thing about the voice. Sometimes it can be difficult to try and expunge that voice, expunge those feelings. But I say that sometimes you can hear the voice. It's up to you whether or not you listen to it. Again, I know I mention this quite a lot in my live streams, but Jay Reid phrases it wonderfully. Whenever we learn to live in defiance of some of those pointless, silly rules, some of those introjects, some of that conditioning. When we learn to live in defiance and we realize that there are decent people in the world and it is okay to make mistakes and it is okay to have a good day, it is okay to be successful. You're not taking away anyone's crown, you're not dimming their light at all just because you're doing quite well. When we start to live in defiance, that voice might still be there, but what you often find is it starts to diminish, it starts to get less and less, pops into our heads once in a while. We're not paying it any notice because we now have evidence of the opposite. It is good to be good. It is good to be happy. It is good to have healthy relationships. It is good to succeed. And it is okay to have a bad day once in a while because we can't be happy every moment of the day. We can start to learn that it is okay. We have a wide range of emotions, and we don't necessarily have to wear our heart on our sleeve and tell everybody what's going on with us, but it is okay for us to recognize there's times we might feel embarrassed. There's times we might feel disappointed. There's times where we might feel excited. It's okay to have a wide range of human emotions. So, oh, Adam is saying, my emotions affect my speech. I can handle the conversation. I want to speak clearly and with thinking. I speak too fast and my emotions are my nightmare. What kind of exercises helps my speech? So that sounds, Adam, like there's a lot of energy there. Maybe, and I really don't know what it is the situation is. It could be that you're talking about something you feel very passionate about. It could be something where you're maybe feeling very defensive or whatever. Sounds a little odd, but sometimes it is just taking a little bit of practice. Practice finding ways to slow things down, to pay attention to what's going on with you. That's why I said earlier on, you're not just thinking about someone's face or someone's voice or when you've experienced these things. You think about what comes up for you physically. Sometimes we'll feel restless. Sometimes we'll get like a knot in our stomach. Sometimes we'll, start to grip the chair or whatever. We might feel frightened. We're going to feel a lot of different things. We're going to feel these things physically as well as emotionally. And it's finding little ways to sometimes slow that down. Little ways can be useful in this. Don't put yourself under pressure to answer straight away. Give yourself a moment. If you have to come back to it in a minute or two later, little things like that. Little ways to ground yourself. Journaling can help with recognizing situations that worked and situations that didn't. Again, building on what works and ruling out what doesn't work. Grounding exercises. I've done previous live streams on this if you want to check them out, but beginning in small ways, like just peppering your day with little things like right now I am, whatever it is. Right now you're about to have a coffee. Right now you're going to walk the dog. Right now you're brushing your teeth. You get into a habit of peppering throughout the day little things to remind you of what you're doing right now in this moment. Okay. You can take it a little bit further. Right now I happen to think, or right now I have the thought, or right now I happen to remember. How much power does a thought have other than what you give it? Okay, now that doesn't mean whatever you're thinking isn't important, because I don't have the right to say that to you. No one has the right to say that to you. Only you can discern whether or not it's important. Not everything is going to need your immediate attention. You can just go back to doing whatever it is you were doing. You can decide to think about it later. You can take it a little bit further as well. Right now, I happen to feel, and name what it is you're feeling. Sometimes we'll say anxious, sometimes we'll say frightened, sometimes we'll say angry. Try to really label it. Go a bit further than that. I feel uncertain. I feel threatened. I feel insecure. I feel like I'm being treated unfairly. I feel helpless. Whatever it happens to be, you name what it is. The key term each and every time is right now. And then you bring yourself back in the moment. Even if it's an uncomfortable feeling, sometimes it is about sitting with that discomfort, riding that wave until it dissipates as you go back to doing what you're doing. Now, you're not trying to ignore things, but you're just staying a little bit more present. When you get into that habit, And when you start to regulate what you're feeling and you're able to recognize your thinking habits and patterns and so on, and you're able to be a bit more present, you can find ways to maybe slow things down. So if you're faced with something, a discussion, a conversation, whatever it is, it's not that you're not going to feel an energy, but it might not necessarily impact you in the way that you're thinking and in the way that it has previously. You'll have a little bit more control, I guess is what I'm saying. They're just little tips. As always, I would like to say, best consulting with a mental health professional, go and speaking to someone. It's all right to ask me a question over YouTube, but really, I'm just a grey-haired guy with glasses waffling on. And I'm being very general because what's going on with you could be very specific to what's going on with you. You might need something a little bit more in depth. So consult maybe a counselor or someone like that. But those little things to find ways of putting yourself back into the moment and to try to slow things down, little pieces at a time. Not something you can do overnight. Something that's going to take practice. Next, Mary is saying listening is caring. Yeah. Again, I may have mentioned this one time before. Someone gave me a poem. They gave me several poems over the years. But there's two in particular that I like to give to people. One's about listening and one's about differences. And the first line of both, I think, are amazing. The one about listening goes something like, if I ask you to listen to me and you start giving me advice, you haven't done what I asked. That's quite thought-provoking, isn't it? But it's true. The second one about differences begins with, if you don't want what I want, please don't tell me what I want is wrong. So, listening and differences. I think they're really interesting. If anybody wants, I'll put them on the Substack thing, on the Patreon thing as well. You can look at them and read them and download them and stuff. But they are interesting. Very happy Mondays. In some cultures, self-deprecating humor is casual and common, like the Irish. Many people put themselves down regularly, possibly reflecting an unconscious need to fit in or avoid expected negativity. Yeah. I've a lot of, I think it's a cultural thing in my part of the world. Definitely. I've got a lot of self-deprecating humor, and sometimes it is just, it's healthy to be able to laugh at the ridiculous side of things, even myself. But other times, yeah, I think it is something maybe of a defense mechanism. My part of the world, we certainly don't celebrate the mundane. It's interesting. I have a friend who comes from Detroit, and he tells me that where he comes from, generally, if someone does well, people are, good for them and all the rest of it. And they like to see people overcoming adversity and stuff like that. Whereas over here in our part of the world, he says, you people just look like this and go, I knew him when he had nothing. He thinks he's special. So there could be something in that. I encourage myself, Angela says, but I would like to have more external support. Yeah. Get a therapist, join a group, develop healthy relationships with other people. Whatever it is, yeah, a little bit of external support is good. This is why I think things like, and I'm always careful how I say this because the danger is getting into an echo chamber. If you can't get out socially, if there's nothing near you, it is good to get into something like online forums, but always be careful the kind of forums you go on. The kind of forums where people encourage each other. They might share their stories, absolutely, and you might want to share yours, and people validate each other and things like that. But the kind of forums where people are supportive and encouraging, they will share things that work. They're not just going to moan about things that don't work. They're going to share ideas. They're going to share their experiences, what helped and what didn't help. And whenever someone feels they're at that point where maybe they don't need it anymore, it's perfectly okay because they don't really want to be in the forum forever. Now they might want to stay in a long time because they want to help other people, and that's fair enough. So online forums can be useful, but as I say, make sure you go in if you're as much as you can. I'm not sure how these things are moderated. Try to go into forums where things are very well moderated, where there is encouragement, there isn't backbiting, there isn't gossip, there isn't people asking you, is it okay? Can they have your details? They want to message you privately and stuff. Those places aren't so healthy. But yeah, a little bit of external support, however or wherever it is you get it, by all means, absolutely. And let me see, where do we get to? I'm not your doormat, says Darren. Do you have a brother on YouTube named Derek Domino? I don't have a brother named Derek. Never mind Derek Domino. So can't help you there. Validating. Where do we get to? Where do we get to? All right. I'm not your doormat says, if I say no, then he thinks, if you say no, I think you do. Well, I have no control over your thoughts, and your thoughts do not change anything. I still don't have a brother called Derek, so you're free to think what you like. Let me see. Healthy self-love, caring, empathy, actively listening, but I just don't know. Is that a learned behavior? Instinctively, we do that. Anytime I help, I feel better. So I don't know I did that for someone else or myself. Well, what I would say, healthy self-love, is even if you do something for someone else, question I guess I would ask is anything ever truly altruistic? Because if you think about it, if there's someone you really like, someone you really care about, and it's their birthday, and you want to buy them a present, you want to get them something amazing, you want to really surprise them. Is there anything wrong with you for being excited because you can't wait to see the look on their face? That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's human nature, and that's being connected. That's love, compassion, and all the rest of it. I also say, and maybe it's just because of the way I was raised, that granddad was kind of strict in a lot of ways, but he always would have said that human decency doesn't cost you anything. That's true. It's just being nice to people, being courteous, being polite, having manners. It don't cost you anything, even if the other person is an absolute muppet. You know, doesn't mean you can't be boundary. Doesn't mean you can't be assertive. It doesn't make you a doormat. Not at all. So having empathy, caring about people, and actively listening to people, it can be a learned behavior, or it can be maybe just part of your personality construct. Who knows? But either way, what does it matter? When you, anytime you help, you feel better. Well, again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Where you get into, I think a lot of people, because there's so much stuff out there on narcissists, why narcissists eat toast, why narcissists have odd shaped toenails, why narcissists do the other thing. When someone does acts of charity and kindness, but they do it because they want the audience, because they want that admiration. It's not just that they feel good inside. They want the admiration from other people. It's an expression I always use, and it's not even mine. It was my mum said it years ago. For some people, charity begins with an audience. If there's no audience, they wouldn't bother. So that's the difference, really. Okay. It's okay for you to do something and feel good afterwards. Being supportive and helping other people. Some people find their recovery from trauma and things like that. Sometimes they find it useful to do voluntary work in different areas. It could be working with animals. It could be working in a garden. It could be, whatever it happens to be. So there can be something quite good in that. So don't give yourself a hard time because you can't quite figure it out. Maybe it's just in your nature. Let me see where I get to. Oh, just jumped. Oh, here's an interesting, great questions in this chat. Okay. Narcissists put themselves down on purpose to receive a compliment. They can, yeah, sometimes they can. The self-deprecation is more about they want people saying, oh, no, not at all. You're an absolutely great person. Yeah, there can be an element of that. Remember, it's all about the audience. It's all about getting the validation. It's all about getting the attention. So when we self-reflect about these things that you mentioned, who's doing the self-reflection? Is there a duality to our personality or core identity? That's a very deep question. It's a very deep question above my pay grade. I think it's our core. I think we're just being honest with ourselves because we all have different personalities. We all have different personality types. We all have different traits. It's our core, I believe. It's what goes on in here. And deep at our core, we have, if you will, our core beliefs and so on. And sometimes those beliefs aren't even ours. As I say, they've maybe been pushed in. We've taken them on board. We've been brainwashed. We've been conditioned in certain ways, but they don't necessarily sit well with us. Which is why, if you go through the first list, you might be feeling bad afterwards. But if you were to behave that way with yourself, you might think it's normal. Okay, so there is kind of an incongruence going on there. The second list, sometimes it might mean where we might feel as if we are becoming a little more vulnerable, but not really, because we have a good sense of self. So again, like my granddad, doesn't matter if the other person's a muppet, good manners, courtesy, common decency, they don't cost you anything. Okay, so I think it's our core, if you will. Could be wrong. I'm open to being wrong. People can challenge me on that. Of course they can. Let me see. Carol is saying, it's my first time in your live chat. Your channel has helped me a lot. It's being targeted by an overt and covert narcissist. Carol, it's good to have you here. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're finding it helpful. And what you might find, you said an overt and a covert, what you might find is those things tend to swing between one and the other depending on what works for them in a certain situation. Where do we get to? I'm not your doormat. Darn, that got taken wrong. I didn't mean any disrespect. I didn't take any disrespect. I'm sorry if I came across as if I was being harsh. It's not at all. I just see the good fun in it. I've been accused, well, not accused. I've been told I look like many people say. There's a lot of different people say I look like, and I'm always curious. Why do they say I look like them? That person. Why do I not say that person looks like me? Not a problem. Where do we get to? So let's jumped again. I find it fascinating when people point out that when I favor someone, that's all. Oh, listen, I'm not your doormat. I don't take any disrespect from it. I just took it as a bit of fun. That's all. Maybe my poor humor didn't come across well. So no, I didn't take it a bad way, and I'm sorry if you took my response in a bad way. Where'd it get to? Where'd it get to? It's just jumped again. Right, okay. I'm going to have to try and scroll back. I think we're very happy Mondays. What about anonymous acts of kindness? Pure altruism or no? Again, how would you define pure altruism? Because even if it's an anonymous and active, let me start that again. even if it is an anonymous act of kindness, we feel good about it. It doesn't matter that no one knows about it. That's perfectly okay that no one knows about it, but we still feel good about it. Is that pure altruism or not? I really don't know. I really don't know. Um, but I think there's nothing wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with us feeling good about helping out another person or caring about another person or supporting another person or even, as I say, you know, buying them that gift for their birthday. It's a very special person to us. You know, we love them a lot. So we buy them something because we can't wait to see the look on their face. You know, we want to see their surprise, their joy. We want to get a big hug or whatever. You know, absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's human nature. Let me see where I get to. Right. Can a narcissistic parent teach the child narcissistic behaviors? Yes, just like we can all, as children, learn a lot of different kinds of behaviors. Yes, narcissistic, even if they don't teach the behaviors directly, kids are going to pick things up. Think kids are, you know what? Sometimes you hear parents saying things like, "Oh, with we never argue with each other in front of the kids." Well, as if the kids don't know, as if the kids can't pick up the tension. So yeah, they can teach, but kids might sometimes pick up certain behaviors. Um, Sometimes those behaviors don't sit well with them. Again, it really depends on the person. So there's also an Irish YouTuber whose name is Derek Domino. Oh, right, getting it now. So, well, I'll tell you what. I'll seek out Derek Domino and see what kind of stuff it is. See what sort of stuff he's doing. He's a similar accent. Oh, right, okay. Northern Irish. Okay. The people in, there's so many different accents in the world, and yet, from what I believe, my accent, Northern Ireland accent, is supposed to be one of the most difficult accents for any, when actors portray people from my part of the world. They just don't seem to be able to get it. I used to laugh at movies. You get these American actors, people. Let me see who's played Irish people. Mickey Rourke. I know he was in one, and Richard Gere. I think he tried it once as well. But they all run around the place saying "fucking reet." That's not how we talk. But yeah, apparently we've got a very difficult accent, which is good because few people would be able to impersonate me. Let me see. Do you think a covert narcissist could take their victimhood so far as they neglect their hygiene and put their unhealthy habits in people's faces to show how much they are suffering? C.R. Strifey, if I've got your name right, really depends on the person. Really depends on what they're trying to get from it. There could be a lot of different things going on, but if they were doing that purely to show their suffering, to get attention and stuff like that, who's to say? Maybe they would. Maybe they would. But it's never a one size. It's never really a one size fits all. Sometimes there can be different things going on, and sometimes we don't know to what degree someone is going to try to get some kind of attention or some kind of control or admiration or whatever it happens to be, or pity or sympathy. So I'm not saying that they could, but it's not to say that somebody wouldn't. They might be able to. Oh, Angela, sorry, I thought I'd asked you. I'd like to know if it's possible to learn narcissistic behaviors from a narcissistic parent in childhood. Have I just answered that again? Sorry, it's jumping all over the place. Yeah, as I say, kids can pick things up. Sometimes they are going to learn things directly. Other times they're going to pick things up. So it is possible that yes, they can. Where did I get to? Where did I get to? Oh, it's jumped again. How can you deal with an insecure and competitive sibling with jealousy problems? The same way as you deal with anybody else. It's not always about how you deal with other people, it's how you manage yourself in those situations. Again, we can care. I always say there's a difference between caring about and caring for. What we cannot do is we cannot change other people. What we do is we have to change how we interact with other people, whether that's a sibling or not. Again, whatever's going on. Sometimes you might find someone who is very competitive, but what they find is no one is competing with them. They're not trying to outdo anyone. They don't care that this person has a nicer car or has more money in the bank or whatever. Maybe they're supposed to feel envious, but they don't. But to the narcissistic person, well, you are envious, and if you're not, you should be. You're clearly lying, and so on. It's really all about how you manage you, not necessarily how you deal with them. They might want to tell you about something they've achieved or something new they've got. You don't necessarily have to drool as they're talking. You can listen to them talk and then go back to doing whatever it is you're doing. Or you can just end the conversation, depending on what it is in the situation. You just end the conversation. It's really up to you, but it's how you manage your boundaries. And I've done previous live streams on recognizing your boundaries and how to deal with them, how to enforce them, how to communicate them, and things like that. But it's regardless of the situation, whether it's a sibling, whether it's being competitive, whether it's whatever it is, it's all about how you manage you. I always say the best way to deal with other people, especially people that keep on coming at you and all the rest of it, just get them to do their own work. You ask them why they think something's important. You don't have to explain why you're not interested. You could maybe ask them why you think you're supposed to be interested, or whatever. There's probably a better way of putting this. Going back to, you don't have to explain to people why your boundaries aren't important. You ask them to explain why they think they're not. Okay, that's probably a better way of putting it. You could just give them their own work to do. Your accent is pleasing and perfect for your demeanor. If I was casting a movie, I'd choose you for the role for your voice alone. Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm the new James Bond. Well, actually, these days I'm a bit more George Smiley than James Bond, but sure, never mind. Okay, where did we get to again? Just jump. Yeah, we can't change people who don't want to change. No, the most we'll ever do with other people is we can encourage them, we can motivate them, we can maybe influence them. We can, encourage and things like that, but we can't actually change them. Which is why it's about how we manage certain interactions. If somebody wants to change, yeah, we can be encouraging and supporting, but we can't do it for them. We, again, support them, things like that. But that's as much as we can do. We can't do it for them, and we can't be held to account if they can't stick to the change. Okay? So where do we get to? Can there be a mismatch about how we introject the world and how we project it? And is this because of our limitations due to knowledge, passage of time, mislabeling emotions, lack of language? I would say that's not unreasonable. Yeah, I think we might have an introject about how the world is. I think maybe how we deal with the world might be a mismatch because of that introject, if you know what I mean. I'm guessing, I'll just use this as an example. I hope this answers your question. If someone were to believe, if they were led to believe, for instance, the world is a dangerous place, they might treat everything as a potential threat, risk, danger. So their behavior might not be that helpful. It might end up pushing people away. It might limit their own options and their own choices in life and so on. Again, with therapy and things like that, it's I often think it's looking at balance. The world can be a dangerous place. There are some dangerous things, some dangerous people, some dangerous places. Um, but the world can also be a very beautiful place, very peaceful place, an amazing place, full of wonder, things like that. So it's trying to find that balance. I hope that answered the question. Uh, um, Paul Stubbs is asking, very mother was, and my wife is, very malignant, covert, sexual narcissist. Do you think malignant narcissists are mentally unstable or demonically evil? Well, then we're going into the realms of spirituality and things like that. For someone to be demonically evil, you would have to believe in demons. I think, I'm not saying that there aren't evil people in the world. History has shown us that there have been. Were they demonically inspired? Were they demonically possessed? But you also get people who are very dysfunctional, which is why when people talk about the narcissist, it's always like this one size fits all kind of narcissist. There are common traits and things like that, but it's like a scale. It's like different traits are going to come out and they're going to be heightened in different situations. I think if you're interested, Paul, if you have a look at the work of Karen Mitchell, she's got a thesis out looking at psychopaths, narcissists, Machiavellian people, things like that, coercive people. She's looking at not so much things like narcissism, psychopathy, and all that. She believes it's all the one construct, and she's calling it. And I hope I get this. I hope I get this right. Is it pervasive predatory personality or persistent predatory personality? So she describes them as predators. And what you have with something like, well, there can be sexual predators, yeah. So it's all the same, and it's sort of like a low end right up to really malignant sort of people. That might be interesting if you want to have a look at that. Karen Mitchell's work, I'm reading through it at the moment. I was hoping to speak to her before Christmas, November, but I ended up with an ear infection and we missed our window. So I hope to maybe get her back sometime. I would suggest if there are demons in the world, the majority of what you would call narcissistic people are not so much demon possessed. I would say they would be more demonically inspired. Okay, so a lot of selfishness and things like that. And the reason I say that is because most of them, I'm guessing, are not really that important in the greater scheme of things. I don't know, you might have a hairdresser, you might have a taxi driver, you might have a barber, you might have a chef, you might have whatever. Do you know what I mean? And they could be very strong in narcissistic traits, not necessarily personality disorder, but very deeply ingrained traits. These people, they're not really in positions that are going to change the world in any great way. So I think a lot of the time is what you're looking at is maybe an instability. You're looking at sort of very maladaptive people. You're looking at dysfunctional people. Um, phrase that I've heard used a lot of times, and I think it's an interesting one. It is one that I would apply myself, I guess. You're often looking at a rejection of reality. Okay, so it's someone who is rejecting reality, regardless of where they are. They have this version of themselves and a version of the way the world should be. When you go into the realms of someone who is very evil, and they do, pardon me, they take pleasure from the pain and misery of others. Again, the work in Karen Mitchell's work, she's looking at the sadistic element of the dark tetrad as well, how that's part of it, because you're going to see that in different places. So you might find someone who is on that spectrum, that scale, that continuum, whatever you want to call it, and the sadistic part of them is greatly heightened. So they enjoy the pain and misery of others. They get a kick out of it. It makes them feel powerful. They enjoy it. They love the thought of people being afraid of them. So again, I could go off on a tangent here. But I hope I've answered your question as much as I can. So where'd I get to? Therapists could take a lesson from Darren's cool demeanor. His voice is most reassuring. Actually, I tend to learn from other therapists. Okay. Actually, I think we all learn from each other. It's good. There's a guy, Patrick Lockwood. He has a channel, and he talks about many different areas of psychology, psychotherapy, and things like that. Very, very interesting guy. Very, very grounded. And I would listen to him. He's live on a Saturday evening, but it's very late for me. I'm usually going to bed by then, but I try to catch up and listen to him through the week if I miss him. There is some stuff I think is a bit off the wall. I'm really not sure what's going on, but but he does have some really good information. I would learn some things from him. He's good. So where do we get to? How would you handle those malignant narcissists, 007? Can anxiety be a cause for many disorders where people with disorder are just anxious all the time and think they are protecting themselves from unreal threats of all kinds? Anxiety wouldn't say necessarily be a cause, but it can be a symptom. It can be a part of it. Yeah, someone with perhaps, say, obsessive compulsive personality disorder can feel a heightened anxiety if things aren't going to plan, if things aren't working out the way they had planned them to work out, if some new piece of information suddenly comes in or something unforeseen. That can cause a lot of anxiety. A narcissistic person might feel anxiety. Again, reality is starting to seep in. They're not the version of them that they would like to be, that they want the world to see. So there can be an anxiety there. I think the anxiety can be a part of, not maybe it could cause some things, but I think that it's more an element of, or a symptom of, perhaps in some cases. Where do we get to? Where do we get to? Oh, it's just jumped again. Okay, well, I'm coming towards the end anyway. It's coming up to my bedtime. So the last one. Oh, it's just jumped. Right, I was going to ask a question. Let me see. Oh, Carl is saying, I'm in the immediate aftermath of leaving an art workshop with a covert and an overt. I thought the covert was a friend. She sent a vid on forgiveness today. What comes next? I would guess that, again, not knowing the situation and not knowing the person, not knowing the environment, what might happen is really dependent on what you do next. That video might have just been sent to you because maybe they wanted the last word, whatever, I don't know. Maybe they sent the video to open up a discussion. Maybe they opened up a video or sent you the video for attention, whatever. Um, Sometimes it depends on what you do next. I mean, for instance, if you, I'm not telling you what to do, but just think this through. You know the person, I'm guessing. How would they react if you didn't respond to it? Even if they've seen that you've read their answer, how do you think they would respond? How do you think they would respond if you were to tell them, I don't want any further contact? How do you think they would respond if you said, yes, absolutely, forgiveness is the way? Um, it's not that you're right. It's not that you're going to know. We can't ever truly know what's going to come. We don't really truly know what's in people's heads. Um, but you might have an idea. Sometimes people will send something because, again, they just want to keep the door open for some kind of contact. Sometimes they will send it because they might not know how to say, look, I'm sorry. um, there could be a lot of variables. What's going to happen next? Really don't know. You know the person a bit better. So what do you think? What do you think might happen in those in each of the scenarios that I've mentioned? Also ask yourself, you've just left the group. Do you want to join it again? Do you want any kind of interaction? Do you want to join a different group, whatever? So you think about what's going on with you as well. This is the thing. Sometimes we don't have to leave. If we leave something, even if it's in bad terms, we don't need to hold on to bitterness or anything. We just move forward. We move on. We do something else in another group or whatever. Um, Come back to the boundaries. What's in your own best interest? Okay, so right. I think I've come pretty much to the end. So, like I say, I hope that you found this evening helpful. I will put, as I say, though, that list of things. I will put the questions in as well, something you can use. Pay attention to the interactions you're having with other people. The 7 habits, if you will, that the 7 habits that can lead to judgment, relationship breakdown, things like that, and the 7 habits that can lead to acceptance, healing, and building things. And it's not just the interactions we have with other people, the interactions that, even the stuff that goes on inside our own head, our own narratives around things, the way we talk to ourselves. Sometimes think, do you ever notice how we can talk to ourselves in such a way, it's like we're beating ourselves with a stick for getting something wrong. Give ourselves such a hard time, give ourselves a lot of grief. And yet, if it was someone else, we would be compassionate. We would try to reassure them. We would do lots of different things. We would, you know, again, that second list, we would be supportive and encouraging. We would contribute. We would, we would do all of those things. A lot of time when it comes to ourselves, it's the first list. We will criticize ourselves. We will judge ourselves. We will be hard on ourselves. We will punish ourselves. So it is worth paying attention to that inner dialogue as well. Very happy Monday, says, shout out to Freud. Peace and gratitude. Have a lovely week. Thank you very much. Very happy Mondays. Again, Freud and I shall be enjoying sausages this week. Freud does like his sausages, and so do I. So thank you very much. And okay, I would like to say, I forgot to say at the beginning, last week I promised I was going to be having an interview with Tegan Osmond. That was supposed to be on Tuesday or Wednesday, I think it was. Unfortunately, that's had to be postponed. But as soon as normal service is resumed, we will get back to having our conversation. We're going to be talking about gang stalking, workplace mobbing, things like that, in workplaces and different situations and so on. On her channel, she interviews a lot of people who can talk about these things, who has experience with these things, who can deconstruct them and so on. I've been on her channel twice, if you want to check her channel out. But yeah, as soon as normal service is resumed, we are going to reschedule and we are going to have that conversation. And over the holiday break, I had been watching Cluster B Milkshake, Sarah, Sarah, sorry, her channel. If anybody watches her stuff, she's diagnosed with antisocial personality, narcissism, stuff like that. So I'd been watching to see some of the things she was saying from her experiences. Little bit of a conversation started. So yeah, her and I will be interviewing her as someone who has narcissism, antisocial personality, things like that, about what's going on with her internally in different situations. She can be very frank. If anybody's ever watched her stuff, she can be very frank, but I thought that would be an interesting conversation. So that will be coming up as well. The other thing is, again, hopefully get out this week, I will be putting up a video on something that I meant to talk about a year and a half ago, and I'm looking at adjustment disorder. And an adjustment disorder is something, first of all, we can all find it difficult to adjust to different things, difficult things, traumatic things, painful things. The adjustment disorder, I'm going to be looking at what can cause that, how that manifests, different things we can do to help recover from it. Things like bereavement, terrible accidents, injury, long-term chronic illnesses, things like that. The different things that can cause an adjustment disorder, having to adjust to something that's really maybe traumatic, very painful, whatever it is. So I will be back again next Sunday, and between now and then, as always, everybody look after yourselves, take care, and thanks for joining me again, and I will see you all next week.